This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Rucham Abba, welcome everyone. Parshas Kisavai. The Gemara says we lane Kisavai right before the end of the year so that we could apply the principle Tichle Shana V'Kiloiseha, that the year end together with her curses. So to speak, as the year is coming to an end, we say the year ends together with the Klalos of the year. So we hope all of the difficulties of Tafshin Pei, the Rebbe Hashem is Mechala, he should wipe away, and Bez Hashem Tafshin Pei Aleph should begin a new era for all of Klal Yisrael, L'Taiva V'Levracha. Parshas Kisavai. The Medrash comments on the words V'haya Imloi Sishma, the opening words of the Tochacha. The Medrash comments, you know what the Tochacha is a fulfillment of? Rabbois Rois Tzadik, many evils before the Tzadik, Umikulam Yatzilenu Hashem. And from all of them, God saves. Somehow the Tochacha is a fulfillment of many evils before the Tzaddik, and from all of them, the Rebbe Hashem saves. Now, how is the Tochacha a fulfillment of many evils before the Tzaddik, and from all of them, God saves? Where do we see God saving anyone in the Tochacha? And what does the Tochacha have to do with Tzaddikim? Why apply the pasuk Rabbois Rois Tzadik Umikulam Yatzilenu Hashem? So let's begin with the following subject. One day we have to have maybe a sefer on all the different numbers, the significance of all the numbers. Today we're going to talk about an interesting number. How many, before I let on, how many klalos are in the Tochacha? So the pasuk says in Parshas Kisavei, Gam kol chali, v'chol maka, any illness, any sickness, asher lo yikasav, b'sefer HaTorah Azos, that are not written in this Sefer Torah, Yaleim Hashem Alecha, God will bring upon you ad hishamdach, until He destroys you. Now, Rabbi say the words kol chali is gematria, kol is 50, chali is 38, gematria, 48, gematria 98. To tell me, says the Baal HaTurim, how many klalos in the Tochacha? 98 klalos in the Tochacha. Does anybody else say that on this week's Parsha? Does Rashi say that on this week's Parsha? No. Rashi makes no comment in this week's Parsha. How many klalos are on the Tochacha? All we have is the Baal HaTurim who says kol chali is gematria 98. Another important fact is, did the curses of the Tochacha ever happen? Did they ever come to fruition? So actually, there's an amazing gra. The gra is found in the Pnina Mishulchan HaGra, Parshas Kiseitzei. And the gra says that the year 5,000 to the year 6,000 is alluded to in the 10 Parshios from Devarim till the end of the Torah. How many Parshios in Sefer Devarim? 10. They're really 11, but we're going to count Nitzavim Vayelech as one. Each Parsha corresponds to another century of the 6th millennia. So, for example, in the year 500 to 500, the year 5,000 to 5,100 is Parshas Devarim. If you want to know what happened in those years, 5,000 to 5,100, learn Parshas Devarim. You want to know what happened between 5,100 and 5,200? V'aschanan, Eikev, Re'eh, and so on and so forth. Which means that this week's Parsha, Parshas Kisavai, discusses what happened in the years 1840 to 1940. So what could be more accurate and exact in its prediction? You want to know what 1939, 1940 was like? Read Parshas Kisavai, the Tochacha. So if you want to know when did the Tochacha ever happen, following this gra, it comes out remarkable that the years 1840 to 1940 is predicted in Kisavai. Next week's Parsha, Nitzavim Vayelech, is 1940 to 2040. If you want to know what's going to happen, if you want to know where in the Torah does it talk about the COVID epidemic, Nitzavim Vayelech. Where in the Torah does it talk about the beginning of the Holocaust? Nitzavim Vayelech. Gafris v'melach sreifach al arza. Your land will be sulfur and salt. Lo yisizara v'lo yisatzmiach kemapecha sedoim. What more accurate depiction of what happened in the year 1940 to 1945 than the beginning of Nitzavim? But then it says, God will scatter you to foreign lands. So the Jews are thrown out of Europe. They go to America. They come to Canada. They go all over the world, South America. But God promises us, Ki lo yisi shachach mi pizare, the Torah will never be forgotten. So where, in what Parsha is it predicted? The renaissance of the yeshiva movement, the rebuilding of the Hasidic dynasties, the publishing revolution of this century. This is all in Nitzav and Vayelech. Nitzav and Vayecha, the years 1940 to 2040. However, the Ramban tells us that in fact the Klalos of the Tochacha did take place during what time? Bayesheni. During the times of Bayesheni, the Klalos of the Tochacha took place. The Ramban writes in Parak Chav Ches, Pasuk Mem Beis, Yisa Hashem Olecha, Goy Meirachai, God will bring upon you a nation from afar. This refers to Vespasian and Titus, who came with a great army from Rome and captured all the cities of Yehuda, and he distressed them greatly, as the Sfarim tell us. And they conquered the walls of Jerusalem, and all that was left was the temple. And in that period of time, as the Psukim in this week's Parsha predict, we ate the flesh of our sons and daughters. And then Yerushalayim was captured, and then Beis Hamikdash was captured. And then the Romans took us back to our lands and exiled us to many nations, whether it's Greece, Egypt, Aram, and so on and so forth. So if you want to know, when did the Klalos of the Tochacha take place? It is the opinion of the Ramban that they took place during the times of Bayis Sheni, the second temple. Every klala that we read in this week's Parsha took place in times of Bayis Sheni. That is the opinion of Ramban. Hence, Bechukoisai, the Klalos of Bechukoisai also took place. When did they take place? They took place in times of Bayis Rishon. Churban Bayis Rishon is Bechukoisai. Churban Bayis Sheni is Kisavai. That is the opinion of the Ramban. Comes the holy Chida, Reb Chaim Yosef David Azulai, in the Sefer Midbar Kedemos. And he says, according to the Zohar Chadash, which is also the opinion of the Ramban, that the Klalos of the Tochacha took place in the times of Bayesheni, it comes out amazing. Because why was the second Beis Hamikdash destroyed? Because of Sinas Chinam. What's the numerical value of Chinam? 98. So it comes out beautiful. The Klalos of the Bayis Sheni, which are predicted in Kisavai, are how many klalos? 98, because the reason for Churban Bayis Sheni was Sinas Chinam. Chinam is 98, so we were visited with 98 punishments. Says the Chida. This comes out according to this beautifully. What the pasuk means: Chinam nimkartem v'loy bekesef tigoelu. You were sold because of Chinam, but you will not be redeemed because of kesef. What does it mean? You were sold because of Chinam, but you will not be redeemed because of kasef? Says the Chida, the Medrash likens money to mitzvahs. Oyhev kasef lo yizba kasef. The Medrash says that means oyhev mitzvahs lo yizba mitzvahs. So kasef is a way of saying mitzvahs. In other words, when you have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, think to yourself, your wife says there's an ani at the door. Tell him I'm not home. Tell him I'm not available. Tell him he came yesterday. Tell him I don't want to look at him. Tell him to get lost. I have a question. If your wife said someone's at the door, he wants to hand you $1,000, you would tell him I'm coming in a minute, tell him I'm coming in a second, tie him down and make sure he doesn't leave, right? So you should envision a mitzvah is like money. Money is a code word for mitzvahs. So the pasuk means as follows: Chinam nimkartem, you were sold because of sinas chinam. The Bayis Sheni was destroyed because of sinas chinam. So if you want to know why you're going to be redeemed, v'loy bekesef tigoalu, you will not be redeemed because you do mitzvahs. You could do mitzvahs from today till ever, forever. Since the avera is sinas chinam, you will not be redeemed until you have avas chinam. Is there anywhere in Chazal, is there any Rashi anywhere that tells us how many klalos are in the Tochacha in this week's Parsha? It's actually Rashi in Parshas Pinchas, when the Torah lists the sheep that were brought on the Yom Tov of Sukkot. Who knows how many sheep were brought on the Yom Tov of Sukkot? We brought 70 bulls, and how many sheep? 14 a day. 14 times 7 is 98. We brought a total of 98 kvasim on Sukkot. Says Rashi in Parshas Pinchas The 98 kvasim that were brought in on Sukkot is Megan, is Matzil, it protects us, keeps away, drives away the 98 Klalos of the Tochacha. Hestamaisa, you want to know what keeps away the Tochacha, the 98 curses of the Tochacha? The 98 kvasim that we bring on Sukkot keeps away, protects us from the 98 curses of the Tochacha. Marv Rabbi, I ask you a question. What do the 98 kvasim that are brought on Sukkot got to do with the Tochacha? What do the kvasim of Sukkot have to do with the Tochacha? So the Shem Shmuel quotes from his father, the Avnei Nezer. Beautiful pshat. What precipitates the Klalos of the Tochacha? What avera did Klal Yisrael do to earn, to deserve the Klalos of the Tochacha? So the pasuk says, Tachas Hashalaya Vadatas Hashem Elokecha B'simcha, because you didn't serve the Lord in joy. So the reason for the Tochacha is because we didn't serve Hashem b'simcha. What is the avodah of Chag HaSukkos? V'samachta b'chagecha. So if we serve Hashem with joy on Sukkos, b'simcha, that will protect us from the curses of the Tochacha, because the curses of the Tochacha are brought on by not serving the Ribono Shel Olam b'simcha. In fact, there's a very beautiful remes in the Chidushei Harim. How many Sheva brachos are there? It's a trick question. There's 7, right? How many days of Sheva brachos? 7 days. How many times a day could you do Sheva brachos? You could do it twice, morning and night. Don't tell anyone, because people are going to make a crazy thing. Now, not only do you have to make Sheva brachos in traditions, but you have to make a breakfast in Dunkin' Donuts, right? Or something like that. Obviously, in the Chol Yisrael, Dunkin' Donuts. Where that is, I can't be Megala. But people are going to, they're going to make a whole thing of it. But technically, you could, what's so funny, Azriel? Technically, you can make Sheva brachos twice a day. A total of how many brachos? 98 brachos. 14 times 7, 98. So the Chidushei Harim would say the 98 Sheva brachos, which the mitzvah is Simchas Chasam Mekala, protect us from the 98 klalos of the Tochacha. In fact, the Chida writes in the Nachal Kidumim, the 98 klalos of the Tochacha were all fulfilled as predicted by the Navi Yeshaya. We say like this, Ki mala tziva. That's in the Haftarah of Shabbos Nachamut. Tziva is Gematria 98. That all 98 were occurred. Ki mala tziva. We met our fill. And the way we're Megan and the way we protect ourselves from it are the 98 kvasim on Sukkos. And Keneged the Tochacha, another way to be protected is learning Torah. Torah you learn Mem Tes Panim Tahar, Mem Tes Panim Tameh, 49 faces of Tuma, 49 faces of Tahara. So that also corresponds to the 98 klalos of the Tochacha. Anybody here named Avraham? Very good. Anyone here named Azriel? No, I'm just joking. Anyone here named Yitzchak? Yitzchak. Anyone named Yaakov? Okay. How many times is Yitzchak's name mentioned in the Chumash? 98 times. To protect us from the 98 klalos of the Tochacha. Why Yitzchak? Yitzchak always bails us out whenever we're in trouble, right? He's the one who he argues with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maybe, okay. And therefore, la'asad lavai, all the klalos of the Tochacha will turn l'toiva, and that's what it means. Nagila, v'nismacha bach. Nagila is Gematria 98. In fact, it's brought down by Rehuda HaChassid. We say in Shir Hashirim, Doidi tzach v'yadayim da'agum erev hava. My beloved is tzach. Tzach is because he protects us from the 98 klalos of the Tochacha. So here we come, Rabbi said, to one of my favorite Rashis. This Rashi is delicious. This Rashi is, Ira's going to love this one. He's going to go home, he's going to be like, dream of sweetness when he hears this. Rashi says like this, if I go over to you, and I say, pal, don't worry, you're still standing, everything's okay, you made it through until now, you're already 40 years old, you've survived X, Y, and Z. Don't worry, if you made it this far, God will continue to take care of you. What kind of speech does that sound like? Someone who's down in the dumps, and you want to be mechazik them. It's okay, you've made it until now, you'll continue to stand. So that's what God tells the Jewish people. Atem nitzavim hayom kolchem. You all are standing today. If you're all standing today, that means despite the fact that you angered God so many times, you still made it until today. Don't worry. Rashi learns that when Hashem tells Klal Yisrael, Atem nitzavim hayom kolchem, Hashem is saying, don't be afraid, don't be scared. You've made it this far, you'll continue to make it. Moshe then tells Klal Yisrael, according to Rashi, don't worry, Klal Yisrael. Because when Klal Yisrael heard 100 curses minus 2, aside from the 49 of Vayikra, their faces turned white. Who could possibly act well enough to be protected from the 98 curses after the 49 curses of B'chukaisai? So Moshe says, don't worry, don't sweat it, you've made it this far, God will continue to bail you out. So this to me is one of the most difficult Rashis in Chumash. Imagine Rashi says, the Jews got really nervous when they heard the 100 minus 2 Klalos. Is that a normal way to talk? Dr. Samet called me up. He says, Rabbi, when's the Shiur? I said, the Shiur is 10 o'clock minus an hour and a half. Dr. Samet's thinking, what's the Rabbi talking about? Why say it's 8:30. That's not a normal way to talk. But that story never happened. We discussed beforehand. He allowed me to use him as an example. But anybody I pick on during the Shiur, we have clearance on, or at least that's what I'm saying, right? But you don't talk like that. Let's say somebody says, Isaac, I want to borrow $1 million minus $999,999. Okay, so Rabbi, get real over here. Tell me what you need. So, I understand, if let's say Rashi, Chazal is talking about Malchus, right? So you give Malchus, so we say Arba'im Chasarachas, 40 minus 1. But 100 minus 2? What's Rashi talking about? 100 minus 2. Who talks that way? 100 minus 2. By the way, tonight the Shiur is going to be over an hour after midnight minus 3.5 hours. So you're like, what are you fardraying me? Why is Rashi talking this way? 100 Klalos minus 2. And then Rashi says they got really nervous when they heard the 100 minus 2, besides the 49, which seems to indicate that when they heard the 49, it's like a walk in the park. 49? That's a big deal, 49. 49 is nothing. I have nothing to worry about when I hear 49. But the 100 minus 2, that's really scary. In what way is the 100 minus 2 any different than the 49? Why didn't the 49 scare them? Asks the Kli Yakar. The Kli Yakar asks these two questions. What's Rashi talking about 100 minus 2? And furthermore, why didn't the 49 Klalos of the Tochacha scare them? Here's the comment of the night. This comes from a very important sefer. Kasnais Oyer. The Kasnaisar was the Rabbi of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz was an orphan, and he was sort of taken in by the Kasnaisar. And the Kasnaisar says, how many blessings do we make a day? 100 blessings a day. Why do we make 100 blessings a day? To protect us from the 100 curses of the Tochacha. But there aren't 100 curses of the Tochacha. There are only 98. What is the Kasnaisar talking about?
Maybe he's counting 2 from B'chukaisai.
Maybe he's counting 2 from B'chukaisai. Now, if he's counting 2 from B'chukaisai, then there are only 47 in B'chukaisai. Where did these 2 curses come from? It's a good kasha, no? You're masking Mazriel.
Yeah.
Okay. Another thing. Another difference between the Tochacha in B'chukaisai and the Tochacha in Kisavai. And that is, the Tochacha in B'chukaisai ends on a good note. V'af gamza is be'eretza yivehem Loi ma'astim v'loi ga'altim l'chaloisam l'hafer v'yisi yitam keni Hashem kecha. God says you could go to lands of your enemies. You'll go to Germany, you'll go to Spain, you'll go to France, you'll go to Brooklyn, you'll go to the 5 towns. You will not be consumed in the land of your enemy. You will survive. So we have nechama, we have consolation. We have consolation in the B'chukaisai. What kind of consolation do we have in Parshas Kisavai? What's the good note? Don't worry, You'll come to America and you'll build yeshivas and everything will be dandy. How much consolation do we have in this week's Parsha? Not one word of consolation in this week's Parsha. There's no nechama, there's no good note. Why is it that in Kisavai there's no consolation and Mechukaisai has consolation? Good kasha. What does Mr. Nister say? Mr. Nister thinks it's a great question. Why is it that there is no consolation in this week's Parsha? The answer is, this is raised by the Radvaz. The Radvaz was the Rebbe of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria. Who's Rabbi Yitzchak Luria? The Arizal. The Radvaz was the Rebbe of the Arizal. The Radvaz started off in Sfas, and then he became the Rav in Cairo. For more than 40 years, he wrote over 2,500 tshuvos. And he said he was asked this question, and he says, the truth is it's a very good question. The Zohar asks this question. And the Zohar answers that there is consolation. Going back to the second Maramakam on the sheet, Gam kol choli v'chol maka asher lo yikasu b'sefer HaTorah zois yaleim Hashem. Yaleim can mean God will hide from you. So there is consolation. God is saying all of these curses, I will hide them from you. However, the Radvaz is not satisfied with the Zohar's approach, because the word alecha means upon you. That would indicate Yale means God would bring it on you instead of hiding it from you. And therefore the Radvaz is up the creek without a paddle. Why is there no consolation in Parshas Kisavai? What do you say, Rafal Yair? It's a good kasha, no? No consolation. It's like more of like a rhetorical kind of question, you know what I mean? Meaning, if you're not going to say the right answer, then, and I'm sure you're going to say the right answer, but then what am I supposed to do? Then, like, you know the shiur already, you know? So I'm stuck. But let's say, we'll give it to you.
I heard this from Rabbi Ben Susan, that it was the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was giving it, not God.
Okay. But what's the consolation? So instead of God hitting us, then Moshe Rabbeinu, so the Radvaz says as follows. We encounter an amazing phenomenon in this week's Parsha. Every single pasuk, we have the shame of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yakecha Hashem, Yitein Hashem, Yishlach Hashem. B'chol pasuk upasuk, the Shem Havaya appears. And the Shem Havaya is the Midas Harachamim. So if God's name appears, that itself is the Nechama. The appearance of Hashem's name, the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu itself is a consolation. Therefore, we don't need any other consolation more than the fact that the Rebbeinu Shalom is with us. But let's explain this a little bit better. Let's elaborate on this point. Marv Rabbi say, as we're about to encounter, the Tochacha comes from attributing difficulty in life to happenstance, to mikra, to coincidence. When we say, I don't know why this is happening. Why is Hashem allowing this to happen to us as if this is happening to us and Hashem is sitting by and He's not doing anything about it? Chas v'shalom. No, we don't believe in that. We don't believe anything occurs, happens, transpires. We believe that everything that occurs, the Rebbeinu Shalom is not forsaking, the Rebbeinu Shalom is taking us. He's leading us. He's bringing us. He's bringing us to where we need to be. Everybody in life has to go through masois, travails, travels, destinations. You know, you don't stay in one place. Eila Masei B'nai Yisrael. Every yid is on the go. Eila Mishpatim, the Zohar says, Eila Gulgalaya. These are the rollings. But when a person recognizes that this is not a punishment, the Rebbeinu Shalom Chas V'Shalom is not forsaking us, He's taking us, that itself is the Nechama. Marv Rabbi said, does anybody know how many times the name of the Rebbeinu Shalom appears in Parshas Kisavai? 26 times. Very good, Reb Shlomo. 26 times. Says the Baal HaTurim, how many times does God's name appear in Shemona Esrei? Now, you know what Shemona Esrei is? That the prayer the Jewish people say 3 times a day, the Amidah, Shemona Esrei. 26 times God's name is in Shemona Esrei. The 26 mentions of God's name in Shemona Esrei protect us from the 26 times Hashem's name is mentioned in the Tochacha, but we will elaborate on this further. Comes the Holy Kli Yakar. And he says something that is oyoim v'noira. Now, when I was, 28 years old, just yesterday, no, just joking, and I was in Koilel, in Yeshiva Chafetz Chaim, and I went to a class on chinuch from Rabbi Yoel Kramer. He's the great expert in chinuch, and I believe, I hope I'm remembering correctly, one of the techniques that he taught was that if you're a Rabbi in a class or a teacher, and you tell your students, if you get up during my class one more time, now don't be so dumb as to tell the student what will happen to them, what the consequences will be. Because if you tell them what the consequences will be, then you're going to have to deliver on those consequences. And maybe they're excessive, and maybe you can't carry them out. And if you don't carry them out, you look foolish. So never say what the consequences are. Just say, if you do X, Y, and Z, suffer the consequences. And then you'll decide at the time what the consequences are. This way, you could give the proper repercussions. Okay, that's a general rule. Because when you if you're telling somebody what's going to happen to them, and they know what might happen to them, they could always prepare. For example, God could say, if you don't behave, it's going to rain, and it's going to rain, and it's going to rain, it's going to tsagista mabul. So the Jews might say, no problem, we'll build a teva. Or Hashem will say, it won't rain where you live. So the Jews will say, no problem, we'll go buy food from the Goyim. Or Hashem says, I'll send the sword. So the Jews say, oh, you send the sword, we'll buy shields. So Hashem says, I'll send famine. So the Jews will say, okay, we'll save up. When somebody knows what the repercussions will be, they could always prepare themselves and deal with it. But when you don't know what the repercussions are, then it's a frightening thing. I remember one time there was a discussion about something. So there were two parties involved, and party B wanted to know, who's party A going to bring? And party A said, party A didn't say. So party B got very scared. Who are they going to bring? Because when you don't know, there's the fear of the unknown. So says the Kli Yakar, you know how many curses are in the Tochacha? We have 98 Klalos. But there are another 2 unspecified Klalos in the Tochacha. You know what they are? Gam kol choli v'chol makkah asher loikas in the Sefer Torah Zois. Every illness, every makkah that's not written in this Torah. So what's the illness? What is it called? I don't know, maybe it's called this pandemic. It doesn't say it in the Tochacha. Because when you don't know what something is, it's much more frightening. You know, that was a lot of the anxiety with this particular pandemic, is nobody knew anything about it. Nobody knew how it spreads. Nobody knew who it attacks. Nobody knew who's susceptible. One day, they say it's because of that cholesterol medicine protects you. The next day they say it's not good. Every day they make up a new maisa. Every morning they feel which way the wind is blowing, and they make up new statements about the pandemic. In other words, they have absolutely no clue what it's all about. And that's so frightening. So Hashem says, Gam kol choli, v'chol makkah, asher lo yiksu b'sefer Torah zeh. So when Rashi says that when Klal Yisrael heard the 100 minus 2, he doesn't mean 98. He means the 100, but the minus 2, the 2 that we don't know what they are. That's what scared Klal Yisrael. The 49 didn't scare us because we knew what they are, so we could give an eitzah how to protect ourselves from it. The 98 didn't scare us. We know what they were, so we could protect ourselves from it. What scared Klal Yisrael, Rabbi say, were the 2 klalos, the mea chasar shnayim, the 100 minus 2, that we didn't know what they were. That was what was so scary. Because there's a fear of the unknown. It wasn't the 49. It wasn't the 98. It was the 100 minus 2. So it comes out, how many klalos in the Tochacha? 100. 2 we don't know what they are. 98 we know what they are. Oh, my Rabbi say, now we understand the comments of the Kas Naisar. The Kas Naisar taught us that every day we make 100 blessings. And the 100 blessings protect us from the 100 curses of the Tochacha. But we asked, they're only 98. No, they're not. They're 100 klalos of the Tochacha. So that's very interesting and very telling, that the way we're protected from the Tochacha is through 100 blessings a day. Because we know one of the main functions of 100 blessings a day is to always recognize there's no coincidence, happenstance, transpiring, happening. It's Shahakal Niyeh B'Dvarai. It's my cup of water is from the Rebbeinu Shalom. My apple is from the Rebbeinu Shalom. My taking care of bodily functions is from the Rebbeinu Shalom. My wearing clothing is from the Rebbeinu Shalom. There is not an act we do all day that we don't attribute to Hashem. That's what protects us from the Tochacha. The more we have recognition, Yud Kei Vavke, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, 100 times, that protects us from the 100 Klalos of the Tochacha. Comes the Chidah, the holy Chidah, and the Pesach Einayim in Menachos, Mem Gimel Amid Beis. And the Chidah says, so really, how many Klalos are there in the Tochacha? 100 Klalos. He says, now we understand the Kasnais are that the 100 brachos a day protects us from the 100 Klalos. But now the Chidah works his magic. How many blessings a day are da'iraisa? So I would have said 4. First bracha Berachas Hamazon, second bracha Berachas Hamazon, third bracha Berachas Hamazon, Berachas HaTorah. However, the Chidah says there are opinions, all 3 brachos of Berachas Hamazon, that midaraisa, it's sufficient to have 1 bracha of Berachas Hamazon. So it comes out that there are 2 brachas a day that we say that are da'iraisa. So you have 2 what we call heavyweight brachas and 98 brachas Rabbanan. Says the Chidah, Oyayim v'Noira. The 2 brachas that we say midaraisa protect us from the 2 big heavyweight klalos, Gam kol choyli v'chol maka shaloi ksuva b'sefer HaTorah hazeh. The 2 big curses that we don't know what they are were protected by Berachas Hamazon and Berachas HaTorah. The 98 klalos, which are of lesser fright and anxiety, which are, we know what they are, they protect us from, we are protected from them through the 98 brachos d'Rabbanan. Marv Rabbi Sai, what else is Gematria 98? Gehenna. Gimel Hey Nun Mem. So you say it has a yud in it. That's where the really wicked people go, with the Gehenna with the yud. But the regular run-of-the-mill Rashayim, they just go to Gehenna without a yud. But, it's best to avoid either place. Both of those places are no-nos. Anyway, so Gehenna is 98. Says the Chidah, why is Gehenna 98? The 98 klalos of the Tochacha protect us from going to Gehenna. Says the Chidah, this would explain a statement of the Orchos Chaim, who says, by making 100 brachas a day, we're zoichet to olam haba. Lachein emar, hineni noisein loy es brisi shalom. Lachein is gematria, 100. Lachein, 100. Emar, say, and if you say the brachas, you'll get olam haba. What's the connection between saying brachas and going to olam haba? If you make 100 brachas a day, you don't have to get the Tochacha. The Tochacha takes the place of Gehenna. So if 100 brachas a day protects you from the Tochacha, and Tochacha protects you from Gehenna, then the chain rule says 100 brachas a day takes you straight into Olam Haba. You don't have to go to Gehenna. The bottom line is, Rabbi say, the Rebbeinu Shalom, to what extent does He think about us? To what extent does Hashem give us hashgacha pratis? When does Hashem say, you know what? Okay, I'll subject you to the vicissitudes of nature. In other words, to what extent does Rebbeinu Shalom think about us? And the answer is, it's reciprocal. To the extent that we think about Him, He thinks about us. So it comes out beautiful. And I heard this shiur many years ago from Rav Noach Isaac Olbaum. What protects us from the Tochacha? 100 brachas a day. Because the more we think about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we think, Shahakol niyeh b'dvaroi, b'ari minei mezainos, b'ari pri ha'adama, ha'moitzi lachem min ha'aretz, hazanas ha'olam kulai, asher yatzar ha'adam b'chachma. Right? The more we constantly make brachas and are aware of Hashem, the more Hashem thinks about us. So by the mention of the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the mention of Hashem's name, that's what protects us from the Tochacha. 100 brachas a day protects us from the Tochacha. The 26 times God's name is mentioned in the Tochacha is the greatest nechama. That's what protects us from the Tochacha. It is the cognizance, the awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is what protects us from the Tochacha. What else protects us from the Tochacha? The midah of simcha, the 98 kvasim on Sukkos, because the midah of simcha, how is a person b'simcha? When a person has a constant awareness that whatever happens in life, God is not forsaking them, God is not abandoning them. It's Rebbeinu Shalom leading them to better places, to that extent that we think about Hashem, always think about Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Yud Kei Vav Kei is in every pasuk of the Tochacha. The more we think about Hashem, the more Hashem genuinely thinks about us. The more we're aware of Hashem through the 100 brachos, the more it's mevatel, the 100 klalos of the Tochacha. Rabbi say, fasten your seatbelts. The Chida in the Sefer on Tehillim, Yosef Tehillos. He brings on the pasuk, Havalanu Ezras Mitzar. Bring us help from the enemy. He quotes the great Darshan, the Lev Aryeh. Does anybody know how many letters are in the Tochacha?
676.
It's really how many words are in the Tochacha. How many words are in the Tochacha? There are 676 words in the Tochacha. Why 676 words from the Tochacha? Well, how many times is God's name mentioned in the Tochacha? 26 times. What is the gematria of Hashem's name? 26. What is 26 times 26? 676. There's 676 words in the Tochacha. 26 names of Hashem. Each word is gematria 76. So we ask Hashem, Hava lanu Ezras. Bring us help. Ezras is 26 times 26. 676. If you do that, we will be protected from the Tochacha. Rabbi say, just a historical point, in the year 1914, which is the year Tafresh Ayin Daled, 674. The Jewish people, there were laws in the land, nobody could patronize Jewish businesses. The Ein Kaineh. So Rav Meir Yechiel of the Oistreifts would say, in the year 1914, which corresponds to really the last two words of the Tochacha. There's 676 words in the Tochacha. The last two words are V'ein Kaineh. So V'ein Kaineh are after 674. The Oistreifts would say, V'ein Kaineh, that nobody bought from us, that was fulfilled in the years 1914, Tafresh Ayin Daled, corresponding to the words V'ein Kaineh. Comes the great, not right now, sorry, 1 second. Comes the great Rav Meirol mi Parmesan. And he says, literally one of the most fantastic ramazim that you could possibly imagine. How many words in the Tochacha? 676. What protects us from the Tochacha? Yud Kei Vav Kei. How many times does Yud Kei Vav Kei appear? 26 times. This is the meaning of the Medrash. You know what the Tochacha is? Rabbis, Rais, Tzaddik. Many evils befall the Tzaddik. How many evils? Rais is gematria 676. Rabbis, Rais, Tzaddik. Many evils before the Tzaddik. How many evils? 676, because there's 676 words in the Tochacha. But what saves us from the Tochacha? Umikulam, Yatzilenu, Hashem. From all of them, the name of the Rebbeinu Shalom protects us. The 26 times God's name appears, 26, each name is gematria 26. 26 times 26 is 676. Amazing. Rabbis, Rais, Tzaddik, many evils befall the Tzaddik. Exactly 676 words in the Tochacha. Umikulam, and all of these words, what protects us, what saves us, what is Megan on Klal Yisrael, what is Megan in Rabbis, Rais, Tzaddik, Umikulam Yatzilenu, Hashem. The more a person lives with the recognition that the Rebbeinu Shalom is with us every step of the way, every turn, every pasuk, every punishment. So it comes out, Oyom v'noira. What protects us from the 100 klalos of the Tochacha? Mea brachos b'chol yom. Why mea brachos? Umikulam yatzilenu Hashem. It's the name of God that protects us. The 2 brachos d'oraisa protect us from the 2 big klalos that we don't know what they are. The 98 brachos m'jabanon protect us from the 98 klalos that we do know what they are. And primarily, the more we have an awareness that nothing happens in this world by coincidence, by happenstance, the more we attribute it to Yakecha Hashem, Yitein Hashem, Yishlach Hashem. That is the nechama. That is why there's no nechama in Parshas Kisavai. The nechama is the presence of the Rebbeinu Shalom every step of the way. There's no nechama because Hashem's name appears in every single pasuk. And therefore, this is the meaning of the Medrash. Rabbis, Rois, Tzaddik. Many evils before the Tzaddik. 676 evils to be precise. The number of words in the Tochacha, Umikulam, Yatzilenu, Hashem. Okay, Rabbi Say, thank you everyone for listening. And Bezos Hashem, please join us in future Shiurim on Wednesday evening before the Yom Naram. Okay, Bracha V'Atzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.